Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the English Globe podcast, where we help you improve your English while discussing interesting topics. I'm Adam, and today, as always, I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Julia.
Hi, Adam. Hi, everyone. We're so glad to have you with us today. We hope you're ready for another great episode. How are you today, Adam?
I'm doing well, thanks, Julia. I'm excited about today's topic. It's something that's so important for all of us, whether we're parents, teachers, or students. But before we get into that, how are you doing, Julia?
I'm doing great too. And yes, I agree. Today's topic is really close to my heart, and I think it's going to be a great conversation. So, what are we talking about today, Adam?
Well, Julia, today's episode is all about the role of parents in supporting children's education. We know that education is key to a child's future, but it's not just about what happens in the classroom. The support that children get from their parents at home can make a huge difference in how well they do in school and in life.
Absolutely, Adam. Parents play such a crucial role in their children's education. From helping with homework to encouraging them to do their best, there are so many ways that parents can be involved. And it doesn't matter if the parents are busy or if they don't have a lot of experience with the school system. There are still simple things they can do to support their children.
That's right, Julia. And in today's episode, we're going to break it down and talk about some of those simple but powerful ways that parents can support their children's learning. We'll be covering everything from creating a positive learning environment at home to staying in touch with teachers and motivating children to do their best.
And to help us with this discussion, we have a very special guest with us today. He's someone who has a lot of experience in this area, both as a parent and as someone who's worked closely with schools and teachers. Please welcome Michael.
Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Adam and Julia. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to talk about this important topic.
We're so happy to have you with us, Michael. Before we dive into the discussion, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your experience with supporting children's education?
Sure, I'd love to. Well, I'm a father of 3, and my kids are all in different stages of their education. My oldest is in high school, my middle child is in middle school, and my youngest is just starting elementary school. So, I've been through a lot of different phases as a parent, and I've learned a lot about what works and what doesn't when it comes to supporting my kids in their education.
That's great, Michael. It sounds like you have a wealth of experience to share with us. I'm sure our listeners will find your insights really valuable.
Yes, definitely. We're really looking forward to hearing your perspective, especially since you've had to support your children at so many different stages of their education. And I know that many of our listeners are parents who are also trying to figure out the best ways to help their children succeed in school.
Absolutely, Julia. And I think one of the most important things for parents to remember is that they don't have to be experts to make a difference. Sometimes, just being there and showing that you care can have a huge impact on a child's motivation and confidence.
That's such an important point, Michael. I think a lot of parents worry that they don't know enough to help their children with their schoolwork, especially if they're busy or if they didn't have the same opportunities when they were growing up. But like you said, just being involved and showing interest can make a big difference.
Yes, and that's exactly what we want to focus on today. Practical ways that any parent can support their child's education, no matter their background or circumstances. We'll be talking about how to create a positive learning environment at home, how to communicate effectively with teachers, and how to encourage and motivate children to do their best.
And of course, we'll be hearing from Michael about his own experiences and the lessons he's learned along the way. We'll also have a Q&A session later in the podcast where we'll answer some questions from our listeners about this topic.
That's right. So if you're a parent, a teacher, or just someone who's interested in education, this episode is for you. We'll be keeping things simple and easy to understand, so even if you're just starting to learn English, you'll be able to follow along.
And don't forget, if you have any questions or comments during the podcast, you can reach out to us on our social media channels. We love hearing from our listeners and getting your feedback.
Yes, we do. Now, let's get started with our discussion on the role of parents in supporting children's education. We've got a lot to cover, so let's dive in.
So, Julia, before we get into the main discussion, I thought it would be nice for us to share a little bit about our own experiences with education. I think it's always interesting to hear how different people were supported by their parents when they were growing up. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea, Adam. After all, everyone's educational journey is unique, and it can really shape who we become. For me, education was always a big focus in my family. My parents were very involved, but in different ways. My mom was always the one helping me with my homework. She would sit with me at the kitchen table and we'd go over my assignments together. She wasn't a teacher, but she always encouraged me to try my best and made sure I had everything I needed to succeed.
That sounds wonderful, Julia. It's amazing how much of a difference that kind of support can make. My experience was a bit different. My parents were both very busy with work, so they didn't have as much time to help me with my schoolwork directly. But they always made it clear that education was important. They set high expectations, and they were always there to celebrate my successes. Even though they couldn't always be there physically, their support was always felt. They made sure I knew that doing well in school was my job, and they were proud of me when I worked hard.
That's so important, Adam. I think a lot of parents feel like they need to be sitting down with their children every night to help with homework, but that's not always possible. What really matters is the message that parents send about education. Whether it's through helping with homework, setting expectations, or just being there to encourage and motivate, parents play a huge role in shaping their children's attitudes toward learning.
Absolutely, Julia. And I think that's something we can all relate to, no matter where we come from. Parental involvement doesn't have to be about doing the work for your child. It's about being a source of support and encouragement. It's about creating an environment where learning is valued and where children feel confident to take on challenges and ask for help when they need it.
Yes, and that brings us to the bigger picture of why parental involvement is so crucial. Studies have shown that when parents are involved in their children's education, those children tend to do better in school. They have higher grades, better attendance, and they're more likely to continue their education beyond high school. It's not just about helping with homework, it's about being engaged in their overall learning process.
That's right, Julia. When parents show an interest in their children's education, it sends a powerful message that education is important. And that can be incredibly motivating for children. It helps them see that what they're doing in school matters, not just to them, but to their family as well.
And it's not just about academic success either. Parental involvement can also help children develop better social skills and self-esteem. When children know that their parents are there to support them, they're more likely to take on new challenges and to keep trying even when things get tough. It gives them the confidence to push through obstacles because they know they're not alone.
That's such an important point, Julia. Education isn't just about getting good grades. It's about developing the skills and confidence to succeed in life. And parents have a huge role to play in that. By being involved, they're helping to build a foundation for their children's future success, not just in school, but in everything they do.
Exactly, Adam, and that's why we wanted to talk about this topic today. Whether you're a parent, a teacher, or even a student, it's important to understand the impact that parental involvement can have. It's something that can make a real difference in a child's life, and it's something that we can all work to improve no matter our circumstances.
Yes, and that's what we're going to explore in more detail today. We'll be talking about specific ways that parents can get involved, no matter how busy they are or what their background is. We want to provide practical tips and advice that anyone can use to support their child's education.
And with Michael here to share his experiences, we're going to get some really valuable insights that I think our listeners will find helpful. So, whether you're a parent looking for new ways to support your child or just someone interested in the topic, stay tuned. We've got a lot of great information coming your way.
That's right. We're just getting started, and we have so much to cover. So let's dive into our first key point: how parents can create a positive learning environment at home. Now that we've set the stage, it's time to dive into our main discussion. In this section, we'll be talking about 3 key ways parents can support their children's education: creating a positive learning environment, communicating with teachers, and encouraging and motivating children. Let's get started with our first key point: creating a positive learning environment. One of the most important things parents can do to support their child's education is to create a positive learning environment at home. A child's learning environment has a huge impact on their ability to focus, stay organized, and feel motivated to do their best. But what exactly does a positive learning environment look like? And how can parents create one? For starters, it's important to have a designated study space for your child. This doesn't mean you need to have a whole room dedicated to studying, but there should be a specific area where your child knows they can go to focus on their schoolwork. This space should be quiet, free from distractions, and organized. When a child has a clean, calm place to work, it helps them concentrate and signals to them that this is a place where learning happens.
That's a great point, Adam. I know that when I was a student, having a specific spot where I could sit down and focus made all the difference. But I also think it's important to make the learning environment not just functional, but also engaging. After all, learning shouldn't feel like a chore. Parents can do simple things to make learning at home more fun and interesting for their children. For example, you could incorporate your child's interests into their study space. If they love drawing, have some art supplies nearby that they can use during breaks. If they're really into science, you could decorate the area with posters or books about their favorite scientific topics. Making the space inviting and relevant to your child's interests can help make study time something they look forward to rather than something they dread.
That's such a good idea, Julia. And it really emphasizes the fact that a positive learning environment is about more than just physical space. It's also about creating an atmosphere that encourages curiosity and a love for learning. Michael, you've been through this with your own kids. How have you gone about setting up a good learning environment at home?
Well, Adam and Julia, I've found that creating a positive learning environment is really about finding what works best for each individual child. With my 3 kids, I quickly learned that what works for one doesn't necessarily work for the others. My oldest, for example, needs complete silence when she's studying. So, we set up a quiet corner in her room with a desk, a comfortable chair, and a lamp with adjustable lighting. We made sure it was a place where she could shut the door and focus without interruptions. My middle child, on the other hand, likes a bit of background noise when he studies. So, He often does his homework at the dining room table, where he can still hear what's going on around the house. For him, the key was having a big, open space where he could spread out his materials. We also keep a basket of school supplies on the table so he has everything he needs within reach. And for my youngest, who's just starting elementary school, we've set up a little learning nook in the living room. It's cozy, with a small desk and some shelves where we keep books and educational games. She loves having a space that feels like her own, but where we can still keep an eye on her and step in to help when she needs it.
That's really insightful, Michael. It sounds like you've put a lot of thought into creating spaces that suit each of your children's needs. And I think that's such an important takeaway for our listeners. There's no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to creating a positive learning environment. It's all about paying attention to what your child needs to be able to focus and feel comfortable.
Yes, and I love how you've managed to make those spaces not only functional but also personalized to each of your children. It goes to show that even small changes can have a big impact on how a child feels about studying. When kids have a space that they enjoy, it can make all the difference in their attitude toward their schoolwork.
Absolutely, Julia. And I think one of the most important things is to involve your child in setting up their study space. Ask them what they need, what makes them feel comfortable, and what they would like to have in their space. When kids have a say in creating their learning environment, they're more likely to take ownership of their study time and stay motivated.
That's a great tip, Michael. And it's a perfect segue into our next key point: communication between parents and teachers. Setting up a good learning environment at home is important, but it's just one part of the puzzle. Staying informed about what's happening at school and working together with teachers is crucial for a child's success.
Exactly, Adam. Communication between parents and teachers is so important, and it's something that can really make a difference in a child's education. When parents and teachers are on the same page, it helps to ensure that children are getting the support they need both at school and at home. But I know that for some parents, especially those who are new to the school system or who may not speak English as their first language, reaching out to teachers can feel a bit intimidating. One of the most important things to remember is that teachers are there to help. They want to see your child succeed just as much as you do, and they're usually very willing to communicate with parents. It doesn't have to be a formal meeting every time. You can start by sending a simple email or making a quick phone call to check in on your child's progress.
That's right, Julia. And it doesn't take much to stay informed. For example, many schools now have online portals where parents can log in and see their child's grades, assignments, and any comments from teachers. This can be a great way to keep track of how your child is doing without having to wait for report cards or parent-teacher conferences. But of course, nothing beats direct communication. Setting up regular meetings with your child's teachers, even if it's just once or twice a year, can really help you understand what your child is learning and where they might need extra support. It also gives you the opportunity to ask questions and share any concerns you might have.
Yes. And another important aspect of communication is sharing information with teachers about your child's learning style, interests, or any challenges they might be facing. Teachers often have many students, and while they do their best to get to know each child, they can really benefit from parents' insights. If your child is struggling with a particular subject, or if there's something going on at home that might be affecting their schoolwork, letting the teacher know can help them provide the right support.
I completely agree, Julia. In my experience, being open and communicative with teachers has made a big difference for my kids. For example, My middle child was having some trouble with math a few years ago. I made sure to speak with his teacher about it, and she was able to recommend some extra resources and strategies that we could use at home. We also set up a system where I would check in with her every few weeks to see how he was progressing. It wasn't a big-time commitment, but it made a world of difference for him. And it's not just about addressing problems. Regular communication can also help reinforce what your child is doing well. When teachers know that you're interested and involved, they can share positive feedback with you that you can then pass on to your child. It creates a positive cycle of encouragement that can really boost a child's confidence and motivation.
That's such a good point, Michael. Positive communication between parents and teachers doesn't just help with addressing challenges, it also helps celebrate successes. And when children see that their parents and teachers are working together, it sends a strong message that their education is important and valued.
Yes. And I think it's also important to remember that communication doesn't have to be all about academics. Teachers can offer insights into other aspects of your child's development, like their social skills, behavior, and overall well-being. By staying in touch with teachers, parents can get a more complete picture of how their child is doing in school and can provide better support at home.
Absolutely, Julia. And for parents who might feel hesitant about reaching out to teachers, I would just say, don't be afraid to start the conversation. Teachers appreciate when parents are involved, and even a small effort to communicate can have a big impact on your child's education. It doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be formal. What matters most is that you're showing an interest in your child's learning.
I couldn't agree more, Michael. Communication really is key, and it's something that can help parents, teachers, and students work together as a team. Now let's move on to our third key point, encouraging and motivating children. This is where parents can really make a difference in their child's academic success. Encouragement is such a powerful tool when it comes to helping children succeed in school. As parents, you have the ability to shape how your child feels about learning and education. When children feel supported and encouraged, they're more likely to stay motivated, even when the work gets challenging. One of the simplest ways to encourage your child is by showing interest in their schoolwork. Ask them about what they're learning, what they find interesting, and what they might be struggling with. Even just sitting down with them while they do their homework can show that you're invested in their education. It's all about being present and showing that you care.
That's so true, Adam. And it's not just about praising them when they get good grades or do something well. It's also about recognizing their efforts, even if the results aren't perfect. For example, if your child is working hard on a difficult math problem but doesn't quite get the right answer, you can still praise them for trying and encourage them to keep at it. It's important to let children know that making mistakes is a part of learning and that their efforts are valued.
Exactly, Julia. Encouragement shouldn't just be about the end result. It should also be about the process. When children know that their hard work is noticed and appreciated, they're more likely to develop a growth mindset. This means they'll be more willing to take on challenges and learn from their mistakes, rather than feeling discouraged when things don't go perfectly.
I can definitely relate to that, Adam. In my experience, one of the best ways to motivate children is to focus on the effort they put in, rather than just the outcome. For instance, my youngest was really struggling with reading at the beginning of the school year. She would get frustrated and start to avoid reading altogether. But instead of just focusing on whether she got the words right, we started celebrating every time she sat down to practice, even if it was just for a few minutes. We'd make a big deal out of the fact that she was trying, and gradually her confidence started to grow. We also found ways to make reading more enjoyable for her. We let her choose books that interested her, and sometimes we'd read together as a family. By making it a positive experience and showing her that we were proud of her efforts, she started to improve. And most importantly, she began to enjoy reading again.
That's such a great approach, Michael. It really highlights the importance of making learning a positive experience for children. When they feel good about what they're doing, they're much more likely to stay motivated. And I love the idea of making learning a family activity. It shows children that education is valued and that it's something everyone in the family is involved in.
And I think that's key, Julia. When parents are involved and show that they value education, it sends a powerful message to their children. It's not just about telling them that school is important, it's about showing them through your actions. Whether it's setting aside time to help with homework, attending school events, or simply asking about their day, these small actions can have a big impact on how children perceive their education.
Absolutely, Adam. And I've also found that setting goals together can be a great way to keep children motivated. Whether it's finishing a book, improving in a particular subject, or even something simple like completing their homework on time, setting small, achievable goals gives children something to work toward. And when they reach those goals, it's important to celebrate their achievements, no matter how small they might seem. This reinforces the idea that their hard work pays off and encourages them to keep striving for success.
That's a wonderful idea, Michael. Setting goals can really help children stay focused and motivated. And celebrating their successes, big or small, helps build their confidence and encourages them to keep pushing themselves. It's all about creating a positive cycle of effort and reward.
I completely agree, Julia. And I think another important aspect of motivation is helping children see the value in what they're learning. Sometimes, especially with subjects they find difficult, children might feel like what they're learning doesn't really matter. But as parents, you can help connect their schoolwork to real-life situations or their own interests. For example, if your child loves playing video games, you could talk about how math is used in game design. Or if they're into sports, you could discuss how science plays a role in understanding how the body works.
That's a great point, Adam. When children can see the relevance of what they're learning, it becomes more meaningful to them. It helps them understand that what they're doing in school has real-world applications and isn't just something they have to do because they're told to. And when they see the value in their education, they're more likely to stay engaged and motivated.
Exactly, Michael. And I think it's also important to remind children that it's okay to ask for help when they're struggling. Sometimes children might feel like they have to do everything on their own, but that's not the case. Whether it's asking a teacher for extra help, working with a tutor, or even just talking things through with a parent, it's important for children to know that it's okay to seek support when they need it. Encouraging them to ask questions and seek help can actually boost their confidence and help them overcome challenges more effectively.
That's such an important point, Julia. Asking for help is a strength, not a weakness. And as parents, it's our job to let our children know that it's okay to reach out when they're facing difficulties. Whether it's academic or emotional support, being there for our children and helping them navigate challenges is one of the most important things we can do to support their education.
Absolutely, Adam. And at the end of the day, I think the most important thing is to let our children know that we believe in them. When children know that their parents are in their corner, cheering them on, and supporting them every step of the way. It gives them the confidence to keep going, even when things get tough.
That's a wonderful note to end on, Michael. Encouraging and motivating our children, creating positive learning environments, and maintaining open communication with teachers. These are all essential ways parents can support their child's education. By being involved, showing interest, and providing support, parents can make a huge difference in their child's academic success.
Absolutely, Julia. And I hope our listeners have found today's discussion helpful and inspiring. Remember, supporting your child's education doesn't have to be complicated. It's about the little things, being present, showing interest, and encouraging them to do their best. And with that, I'd like to thank Michael for joining us today and sharing his valuable insights.
Thank you for having me, Adam and Julia. It's been a pleasure to talk about such an important topic.
Thank you, Michael. And to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We hope you'll join us again next time as we continue to explore ways to support and enhance your child's learning journey.
That's right. Until then, keep supporting your children, keep communicating with their teachers, and most importantly, keep encouraging them to reach for their dreams. Now, let's dive deeper into today's topic by hearing from our special guest, Michael. Michael, you've been involved in your children's education for many years, and I'm sure you have some valuable insights to share with our listeners. Could you start by telling us about a personal experience where your involvement in your child's education made a real difference?
Absolutely, Adam. Thank you for having me on the podcast today. I'm really passionate about this topic because I've seen firsthand how much of an impact parents can have on their children's education. I'd like to share a story that's very close to my heart. This story is about my eldest daughter, Emma. When Emma was in the 4th grade, she started struggling with math. It wasn't that she wasn't capable, she just had a hard time grasping some of the concepts. At first, she would come home frustrated, saying that math was too hard and that she didn't understand what the teacher was explaining. As a parent, it was tough to see her so upset and feeling like she was falling behind. I realized that if I didn't step in to help, Emma might start to lose confidence in herself and her abilities. So, I decided to get more involved. I began by talking to her teacher to better understand what Emma was struggling with. The teacher was very helpful and suggested some resources that we could use at home. After that, we set up a dedicated study time for math each evening. It wasn't always easy, and there were times when Emma would get frustrated or want to give up. But I made sure to be patient and positive. We worked on the problems together, and I tried to make it as fun as possible by turning it into a game or using real-life examples that she could relate to. Over time, I started to see a change in Emma. She began to approach math with a little more confidence, and the concepts that once seemed impossible started to make sense to her. By the end of the school year, Emma not only improved her math grades, but also gained a new sense of self-belief. She realized that with hard work and the right support, she could overcome challenges. And that's a lesson that has stayed with her ever since. Looking back, I'm so glad I took the time to get involved. It wasn't just about improving her math skills, it was about showing her that she wasn't alone and that she had someone in her corner, cheering her on. That experience strengthened our relationship and gave her the confidence to tackle other challenges in the years to come.
That's such an inspiring story, Michael. It really highlights the difference that parental involvement can make in a child's education. Your patience, encouragement, and willingness to work alongside Emma clearly made a huge impact on her confidence and academic success.
Absolutely, Julia. And what's really important to note here is that it wasn't just about helping with homework. It was about being present, being supportive, and creating a positive learning environment where Emma felt safe to make mistakes and learn from them. Michael, I'm sure there are many parents listening who want to be as supportive as you were with Emma. What practical advice would you give to parents who want to support their children's education?
That's a great question, Adam. I think the most important piece of advice I can give is to be present and engaged. You don't have to be an expert in every subject or spend hours helping with homework, but showing interest in your child's education can make a world of difference. Here are a few practical tips that I've found to be really effective. 1. Communicate regularly with teachers. One of the best ways to stay informed about your child's progress is to maintain open lines of communication with their teachers. Don't wait for parent-teacher conferences. Reach out periodically to ask how your child is doing, what they're excelling in, and where they might need extra help. Teachers can offer valuable insights and suggestions that you can use to support your child at home. 2. Create a positive learning environment at home. As I mentioned earlier, setting up a dedicated study space can help your child focus and feel more organized. This doesn't have to be a big fancy room, just a quiet, well-lit area with all the supplies they need. Make sure it's a space where they feel comfortable and free from distractions. Additionally, try to establish a routine for homework and study time. Having a consistent schedule can help children develop good study habits. 3. Be a role model. Children learn a lot by observing the adults around them. If they see that you value education and lifelong learning, they're more likely to adopt those same attitudes. This doesn't mean you have to go back to school yourself, but showing curiosity, reading books, and talking about what you're learning can inspire your child to do the same. 4. Encourage a growth mindset. It's important to teach your child that intelligence and abilities can be developed through effort and perseverance. Praise them for their hard work, not just their grades, and help them see mistakes as opportunities to learn and grow. When children understand that they can improve through effort, they're more likely to embrace challenges and keep trying, even when things get tough. 5. Stay positive and patient. There will be times when your child gets frustrated or feels overwhelmed, and it's important to stay positive and patient during these moments. Listen to their concerns, offer reassurance, and help them break down tasks into smaller, manageable steps. Remind them that it's okay to struggle sometimes. What matters is that they keep trying and don't give up. 6. Be involved, but not overbearing. While it's important to be involved in your child's education, it's equally important to give them space to learn and grow independently. Encourage them to take responsibility for their own learning and problem-solving, but let them know that you're there to support them when needed. Finding the right balance between being involved and giving them autonomy can help them develop confidence and self-discipline. 7. Celebrate achievements, big and small. Finally, take the time to celebrate your child's achievements, no matter how small they may seem. Whether it's completing a challenging assignment, improving in a subject, or simply sticking to their study routine, recognizing their efforts can boost their confidence and motivation. Celebrations don't have to be elaborate. Sometimes, a simple word of praise or a special family activity is all it takes to show that you're proud of them.
Those are such valuable tips, Michael. I especially love the idea of celebrating both the big and small achievements. It's a great way to keep children motivated and to show them that their hard work is appreciated.
I agree, Julia. And I think your point about encouraging a growth mindset is particularly important, Michael. It's crucial for children to understand that they can improve through effort and that mistakes are part of the learning process. This mindset not only helps them in school, but also in life.
Exactly, Adam. It's all about helping our children build the confidence to face challenges head-on, knowing that they have the support and resources to succeed. And remember, every child is different, so what works for one child might not work for another. It's important to be flexible and willing to try different approaches until you find what works best for your child.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience and advice with us, Michael. I'm sure our listeners have found it incredibly helpful. Your story about Emma is a wonderful example of how parental involvement can make a real difference in a child's education.
It's been a pleasure, Julia. I'm glad I could share my experiences, and I hope it encourages other parents to get involved in their children's education. It's one of the most rewarding things you can do as a parent.
Absolutely, Michael. And I think the key takeaway here is that being involved doesn't have to be complicated. It's about showing up, being supportive, and creating an environment where your child feels valued and encouraged. With that, we're going to wrap up this segment. But before we do, Julia, do you have any final thoughts?
Just that I hope our listeners feel empowered to take an active role in their children's education. As we've discussed today, even small actions can make a big difference. So whether it's setting up a study space, staying in touch with teachers, or simply praising your child's efforts, remember that your involvement is crucial to their success.
Well said, Julia. And once again, thank you, Michael, for joining us and sharing your valuable insights. We appreciate your time and your commitment to supporting your children's education.
Thank you, Adam. It's been a pleasure, and I'm always happy to help.
And to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in today. We hope you found this discussion helpful and inspiring. Remember, supporting your child's education is one of the most important things you can do as a parent. We'll be back next time with more tips and advice, so stay tuned.
That's right, Julia. Until next time, keep encouraging your children, stay involved in their education, and most importantly, believe in their potential. All right, Michael, we've covered a lot of ground today. Your insights have been incredibly valuable, but I'm sure our listeners might still have a few questions. Julia and I have a couple of questions ourselves that we think will really help parents who are navigating the challenges of supporting their children's education. So, let's dive into our Q&A session.
Yes. Michael, one thing that comes to mind is the balance between helping your child and giving them enough space to learn independently. This is something many parents struggle with. How did you manage this with your own children? Did you ever find it difficult to step back and let them figure things out on their own?
That's a great question, Julia, and it's something I think all parents grapple with at some point. When you see your child struggling, the instinct is to step in and fix the problem for them. But over time, I've learned that it's important to give them the tools they need to solve problems independently while still being there as a support system. For example, with my son, Jake, there were times when he would get frustrated with a difficult homework problem. My first instinct was to give him the answer or guide him step by step. But I realized that this approach wasn't helping him develop critical thinking skills. So instead, I started asking him guiding questions to help him think through the problem on his own. I'd say things like, "What do you think the first step should be?" Or, "Have you seen a problem like this before? How did you solve that one?" This way, I was still involved, but I was encouraging him to take the lead. It wasn't always easy to hold back, but over time, Jake became more confident in his abilities and more willing to tackle challenges on his own. Of course, I was always there to step in if he truly needed help, but by giving him the space to try on his own first, he learned to trust his instincts and develop his problem-solving skills.
That's such an important point, Michael. It's about finding that balance between being supportive and fostering independence. And it sounds like your approach not only helped Jake academically, but also built his confidence in facing challenges. Now, another challenge many parents face is managing their own expectations and pressures around their child's education. We live in a world where academic success is often seen as a key indicator of future success, and this can create a lot of stress for both parents and children. How did you handle these pressures, and what advice would you give to parents who are feeling overwhelmed by the desire for their child to succeed?
You're absolutely right, Adam. The pressure to succeed academically can be intense, and it's easy for parents to feel like they have to push their children to excel in every subject. But what I've learned over the years is that success isn't just about grades. It's about helping your child develop a love for learning and the resilience to overcome challenges. With my daughter Emma, for example, I had to remind myself that it was okay if she didn't get straight A's in every subject. What mattered more was that she was trying her best and that she was happy and healthy. I made a conscious effort to focus on her overall development, not just her academic performance. I encouraged her to explore her interests, whether that was reading, art, or sports, and I tried to celebrate her efforts rather than just the outcomes. My advice to other parents would be to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Ask yourself, what kind of person do I want my child to become? Focus on nurturing qualities like curiosity, kindness, and perseverance, rather than just academic achievement. And remember, it's okay to adjust your expectations based on your child's individual strengths and interests. Every child is unique, and success can look different for each one.
That's such a refreshing perspective, Michael. It's easy to get caught up in the pressure to perform, but it's so important to remember that education is about more than just grades. It's about helping children grow into well-rounded individuals. Now, let's talk about the challenges that come with balancing work, life, and being actively involved in your child's education. Many parents, especially working parents, struggle to find the time to be as involved as they would like to be. How did you manage this, and what tips do you have for parents who are trying to juggle it all?
That's definitely a challenge, Julia, and one that I faced as well. Between work and other responsibilities, it can be tough to find the time to be actively involved in your child's education. But what I've found is that it's not necessarily about the quantity of time you spend, but the quality. One thing that worked for me was setting aside specific times each day or week that were dedicated to my children. It didn't have to be long. Sometimes it was just 15-20 minutes. But during that time, I would focus entirely on them. Whether it was helping with homework, reading together, or just talking about their day, those moments became really meaningful. Another tip is to involve your children in your daily routines. For example, if you're cooking dinner, ask them to help and use that time to talk about what they're learning in school. If you're running errands, bring them along and have a conversation about something educational, like math when you're shopping or geography when you're driving. Finally, don't be afraid to ask for help. If you have a partner, family member, or even a friend who can pitch in, that can make a big difference. And remember, it's okay to prioritize your own well-being too. If you're stressed and overwhelmed, it's harder to be present for your children. So, make sure you're taking care of yourself as well.
Those are such practical and reassuring tips, Michael. It's all about finding ways to be involved that fit into your life, rather than feeling like you have to do everything perfectly. And I think what you said about quality time is so important. It's those focused, intentional moments that really make a difference.
Absolutely, Adam. And I love the idea of involving children in everyday activities as a way to stay connected and support their learning. It's a great reminder that education doesn't just happen in the classroom. It's a part of life. Now, let's take a moment to see if we have any questions from our listeners. We've received a few interesting ones in advance. Here's one from Sarah, a mother of 2, who asks, Michael, how do you handle situations where your child is resistant to your involvement or help with schoolwork? My son often says he doesn't need my help and gets frustrated when I try to get involved. How can I support him without making him feel pressured?
That's a really thoughtful question, Sarah, and I completely understand where you're coming from. It's not uncommon for children, especially as they get older, to want more independence and resist parental involvement. In situations like this, it's important to respect their need for autonomy while also finding ways to offer support. One approach I've found helpful is to take a step back and give your child some control over how and when you get involved. For example, you might say, "I'm here if you need any help, but I trust that you can handle this on your own. Let me know if there's anything specific you'd like to talk through, or if you need a second pair of eyes on something." This way, you're letting them know that you're available without being overbearing. Another strategy is to focus on open-ended conversations rather than direct assistance. Instead of saying, "Do you need help with your homework?" you might ask, "How do you feel about the assignment you're working on?" Or, "What's the most interesting thing you learned today?" This can lead to a more relaxed conversation where your child feels comfortable sharing without feeling like they're being pressured to accept help. Lastly, try to reinforce the idea that making mistakes and asking for help are normal parts of the learning process. Sometimes children resist help because they're worried about disappointing their parents or because they want to prove they can do it on their own. By creating an environment where it's okay to ask questions and make mistakes, you can help alleviate some of that pressure.
That's such great advice, Michael. It's all about finding that balance between being supportive and respecting your child's growing independence. And I think Sarah will really appreciate your thoughtful response.
Yes, thank you for that, Michael. And thank you to our listeners for sending in your questions. We always love hearing from you, and it's so valuable to have these real-life questions to discuss.
Absolutely, Julia. And once again, a big thank you to Michael for sharing his wisdom and experiences with us today. We hope that this Q&A session has provided our listeners with some practical strategies and reassurance as they navigate the challenges of supporting their children's education.
Thank you, Adam and Julia. It's been a pleasure being here, and I hope that my experiences can help other parents who are on this journey. Remember, every parent and child is different, so find what works best for you and your family. And don't forget to celebrate the small victories along the way.
Wise words, Michael. And with that, we're going to wrap up today's episode. We hope you found this discussion helpful and that you're leaving with some new ideas to try out at home. Remember, supporting your child's education is one of the most important things you can do, and even small efforts can make a big difference.
That's right, Julia. Every step you take as a parent to support your child's learning is a step toward helping them grow into confident, capable individuals. It doesn't have to be perfect, just consistent and heartfelt.
Exactly, Adam. And to our listeners, if you have any more questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please feel free to reach out to us. We're here to help you on your journey as both parents and learners.
Before we sign off, I want to thank Michael once again for joining us today. Your insights have been invaluable, and I'm sure our listeners have learned a lot from your experiences.
Thank you, Adam and Julia. It was a pleasure to be here, and I'm glad I could share my journey with all of you. Parenting isn't easy, but it's incredibly rewarding, especially when you see the positive impact your involvement can have on your child's education.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the English Globe podcast. We hope you'll join us next time as we continue to explore more ways to support our children's learning and development. Until then, keep encouraging, keep supporting, and keep learning together.
Well, Julia, we've had a truly enlightening conversation today about the critical role parents play in supporting their children's education. Let's take a moment to recap some of the key points we've discussed.
Absolutely, Adam. We began by talking about the importance of creating a positive learning environment at home. Whether it's setting up a quiet, organized study space or finding creative ways to make learning fun, it's clear that the atmosphere parents create at home can significantly impact their child's ability to learn effectively.
That's right, Julia. We also touched on the importance of communication between parents and teachers. Staying informed about your child's progress, attending parent-teacher meetings, and maintaining open lines of communication with educators can help parents better understand their child's needs and how they can best support them.
And we can't forget about the power of encouragement and motivation. As Michael shared, celebrating your child's efforts, recognizing their achievements, and providing positive reinforcement are all crucial in helping children stay motivated and confident in their academic journey.
Those are such valuable points, Julia. Creating a positive environment, maintaining good communication, and encouraging our children are all steps we, as parents, can take to ensure our kids feel supported and empowered to succeed in school.
And now, Michael, we'd love to hear your final thoughts. What's one piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with as they continue to support their children's education?
Thanks, Julia. If there's one thing I'd like parents to remember, it's that your involvement in your child's education doesn't have to be perfect or overwhelming. What matters most is that you're present, that you show interest in their learning, and that you're there to support them through both the successes and the challenges. Small, consistent actions can make a big difference. So, whether it's a simple conversation at the end of the day, helping with homework, or attending school events, every little bit counts. And don't forget to take care of yourself too. Because when you're at your best, you can give your best to your children.
That's such important advice, Michael. Parenting is a journey, and it's those small, everyday moments of support and care that truly shape our children's futures.
Absolutely, Adam. We'd like to extend a huge thank you to Michael for joining us today and sharing his valuable experiences and insights. Your wisdom has been so helpful, and I'm sure our listeners will take a lot away from what you've shared.
Thank you, Adam and Julia. It's been a pleasure to be here, and I'm glad I could contribute to this important conversation. I hope my experiences can help other parents feel more confident and capable in supporting their children's education.
And to our listeners, we want to remind you that your role in your child's education is vital. Stay involved, stay curious, and most importantly, stay supportive. Your efforts today will shape the leaders of tomorrow. Education is a team effort, and with the right support from parents, teachers, and the community, every child can reach their full potential.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the English Globe podcast. We hope you found today's discussion helpful and inspiring.
And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. We'll be back soon with more tips, insights, and discussions to help you on your journey as both learners and educators.
Until next time, keep supporting, keep learning, and keep growing. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.